In the deep void of space, a blue planet named Tarnis IV shimmered like a lonely gem among dying stars. Its people, the Valorians, had once believed they were safe, protected by strong fleets and powerful energy shields. But safety was an illusion. The Crag Dominion, a brutal empire of steel and fire, had come without mercy. Their ships blotted out the skies, and their weapons burned cities into dust. Commander Rethan stood inside the shattered control room of the Valorian capital station, staring at the flickering hologram of the battle below. His troops were tired, his ships destroyed, and every signal for help had gone unanswered. Around him, alarms screamed and the floor shook from distant explosions. "We can't hold them any longer," shouted one of his officers, panic in her eyes. Rethan gritted his teeth. "Send another distress signal, any frequency, any range. Someone has to hear us." The officer hesitated. "Commander, we've already called the Galactic Union. No one is coming." Rethan's voice hardened. "Then send it anyway." The signal shot out into the stars, a desperate cry, a final call for help. It traveled through the dark, past ruined colonies, through old trade lanes, and into places where no one dared to go. Hours passed. Days. No response came. The Valorians began to lose hope. But far away, beyond the known systems, the signal reached a strange sector. The maps labeled it simply, uninhabitable. Death World 1. The message echoed across old satellites, half broken and forgotten. Then, something woke up. On a quiet planet covered with oceans and storms, a station deep under the mountains received the alien signal. The computers translated it slowly, word by word, until a voice spoke inside a dark command room. Distress signal detected. Origin: Tarnis IV. Status: critical. A pair of human eyes opened in the dim light. Captain Mira Cole looked at the monitor, reading the message in silence. She had seen this kind of call before, pleas from worlds under attack, begging for mercy, for strength, for help. But Tarnis IV was far outside the human network. They were strangers. Still, something in the message caught her attention. The coordinates were close to old Crag territories. Mira leaned forward. "Patch it through to command," she ordered. Within minutes, the hidden base came alive. Soldiers rushed through narrow corridors, lights flickered red, and ships in underground hangars powered up. For centuries, humans had stayed silent, watching the galaxy tear itself apart. But they remembered the Crag. The Crag had once tried to invade Earth, and failed. Since then, humanity had changed. They had built quietly, learned, evolved, and waited. And when others called them monsters, they smiled, because they knew the truth. They were survivors of a death world. Back on Tarnis IV, the Valorians' defenses were breaking apart. Fires burned through their capital domes. Children hid in shelters while soldiers fought hopeless battles against machines taller than towers. Commander Rethan stood before the shattered war table, his face pale. "How long until the shields collapse?" he asked. "Minutes," said his aide. "The Crag are sending their final wave." Rethan looked at the sky, red with enemy fire. "Then this is how we end." But then, a sound. The static of the communications panel flickered to life. A soft voice spoke through the chaos. "Message received," it said. Rethan froze. "What?" The voice repeated, calm and firm. "Distress signal acknowledged. Backup en route." His officers stared at each other. "Who is this?" Rethan demanded. "Identify yourself." There was a pause, then the voice returned. "This is Earth Defense Unit, Special Response Division. Hold your position." The line went silent. Rethan turned to his aide. "Earth. That's not possible. That world is marked as uninhabitable. No life could survive there." "Maybe it's a trick," the aide said. But before they could argue, the sky changed. From the clouds above, a black shape descended, silent, smooth, and fast. It wasn't like any ship the Valorians had ever seen. No glowing engines. No sound. Just a cold, dark shadow cutting through the flames. The Crag fleet noticed it too. Their sensors scrambled, unable to read it. Then, with a sound like thunder, the ship released a pulse that shattered the nearest Crag cruiser in half. In the control room, Rethan's officers gasped. What kind of weapon was that? Unknown, Commander. It doesn't match any known technology. The black ship landed on the burning ground outside the capital. The ramp opened slowly. Out of the smoke, figures appeared, humans, tall and calm, wearing armor that looked ancient yet alive. Their helmets reflected the fire around them. The leader stepped forward, holding a flag with a strange symbol, a circle split by lightning. "We got your call," she said. Commander Rethan could only stare. "How many are you?" "Enough," the woman said. Behind her, more humans stepped out, their weapons glowing faintly blue. The Crag army, confused and cautious, opened fire. Plasma bolts filled the air. The humans didn't run. They moved like ghosts, fast, silent, deadly. Every shot they fired hit its mark. Every step they took was measured and perfect. The battlefield, once full of screams, fell silent. The Valorians watched from a distance, unable to speak. Rethan whispered to himself, "They are not soldiers, they are something else." The aide beside him trembled. "Commander, they came from a death world." Rethan looked at the humans, their armor shining in the firelight. "Then God help the Crag," he said softly. "Because death just answered our call." The smoke from the battlefield still hung heavy in the air when dawn rose over Tarnis 4. The once beautiful cities were now piles of broken metal and burned stone. Fires still burned in the distance, and the cries of the wounded echoed through the ruins. Commander Rethan stood on a damaged platform, staring at the black human ship that now rested quietly in the middle of the wasteland. It didn't look like any vessel he had ever seen, no shining armor, no bright lights, no grand design. It looked like a shadow carved from the night itself, built only for one purpose: war. Rethan's aide approached carefully, eyes filled with fear. "Commander, the humans request to meet. Their leader is waiting outside." Rethan nodded and adjusted his torn armor. "Let's see what kind of creatures answer calls from death." He walked across the cracked ground until he saw them, the humans. There were only a few dozen of them, but they stood like an army of thousands. Their armor was black and silver, scratched and scarred from countless battles. Their weapons were compact, strange, and silent. The leader, Captain Mira Cole, turned as Rethan approached. Her helmet was off now, revealing a face that looked calm but tired, as if she had seen too many wars. "You're the one who sent the distress signal," she said, her voice steady. Rethan nodded. "And you are the one who answered." "That's right," Mira said simply. "We came as soon as we could." Rethan studied her, confused. "You came from Earth. That planet is uninhabitable. Its gravity, storms, and wildlife are deadly. No one can survive there." Mira almost smiled. "You're right. No one should survive there. But we did." Rethan looked at her soldiers, each one silent, focused, standing completely still even as the wind whipped across the battlefield. There was something in their eyes he couldn't name, a quiet intensity, the kind that comes from facing death too many times. "You came to help us fight the Crag?" he asked. "We came to end them," Mira said. "Your enemy is an old one. We know their ways." She motioned to one of her soldiers, who opened a device projecting a hologram of the Crag fleet still in orbit. "They've been using the same tactics for centuries. They don't adapt. They rely on fear. That's why they lose when they face humans." Rethan frowned. "You think a handful of you can defeat a fleet?" Myra's eyes narrowed slightly. "We don't think. We know." Before Rethan could reply, an explosion shook the ground. The Crag had returned, sending in fresh troops. Dozens of their heavy war machines stormed the city ruins, their cannons lighting up the dark sky. Mira didn't flinch. She raised her hand and gave a single command. "Shadow teams, advance." What happened next silenced everyone. The humans moved like no soldiers Rethan had ever seen. They didn't shout, didn't hesitate, didn't fear. They vanished into smoke, appearing behind enemy lines, striking with brutal precision. The crag machines exploded one after another, their armor sliced open by strange blue pulses. Within minutes, what had looked like an unbeatable army became nothing but wreckage and silence. Even Rethan's best soldiers had to stop and stare. "They fight like machines," one whispered. "No," Rethan said softly. "Machines follow orders. They move like predators." Myra's voice came through her comms calmly. "Sector 2 clear. Push forward." She moved through the battlefield with the same focus as her troops, scanning every shadow. Her armor was scratched by plasma fire, but she didn't slow down. She aimed, fired, moved again, efficient, deadly, unstoppable. After what felt like hours, the fighting ended. The crag troops lay scattered, their machines burning. The humans regrouped, silent as always, checking their weapons and helping each other without a word. Rethan approached slowly, still in shock. How did you do that? That was only 30 of you, against hundreds." Mira removed her helmet again and looked up at the smoky sky. "It's simple," she said. "On Earth, everything tries to kill us. The weather, the animals, even the ground beneath us. We learned how to survive where others would die. War is just another storm to us." Rethan was silent, trying to understand. The humans didn't celebrate. They didn't cheer or boast. They just prepared for the next fight. It was as if victory meant nothing, only survival did. One of the Valorian soldiers walked up to a human trooper, trying to thank him. The trooper nodded once but said nothing, his expression unreadable behind his visor. "Do they ever rest?" Rethan asked quietly. Mira looked at him. "Rest? Maybe. But not while the crags still breathe." Her words sent a chill through him. These weren't mercenaries or conquerors. They were something older, harder, beings shaped by constant danger. She turned toward the horizon, where distant explosions still flashed. "They'll send more ships soon," she said. "This was only their forward line. We'll hit their main base before they recover." Rethan hesitated. "You can't fight them alone. You'll need support." Mira shook her head. "Your people have already given enough. Stay behind your lines. Let us do what we were made for." She walked away before he could answer. Rethan watched her go, realizing something he couldn't quite put into words. These humans didn't come for glory. They came because someone called for help, and on their death world, answering a cry for help meant survival for everyone. As night fell again, Rethan stood on the ridge overlooking the battlefield. The human ship loomed below, its dark surface reflecting the fires around it. He heard the humans' voices faintly over their comms, short words, tactical, emotionless. Then, somewhere in the distance, a human laugh echoed, rough, weary, but real. For the first time since the war began, Rethan felt something like hope. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "Maybe death is not what follows them, maybe it's what runs from them." The next morning came with no sunlight, only the orange glow of burning skies. Tarnis 4 had become a graveyard of metal and ash, but now it was also a proving ground. The Crag Dominion had tasted defeat for the first time on this world, and they were furious. Their commanders in orbit were already preparing another strike, bigger and deadlier than before. Commander Rethan watched the horizon through a cracked visor as the humans moved like shadows among the ruins, setting traps, scanning the skies, and repairing their strange black ship. They worked with precision, every movement efficient, every order quiet. There was no panic, no fear, only purpose. Captain Mira Cole stood at the center of it all, looking up at the smoke-filled sky. She didn't blink even when thunder rolled from the explosions beyond the hills. Her voice came calmly through her comms. "Phase 2 begins now. Crag reinforcements are on approach. Shadow teams, positions." Rethan approached her carefully. You know they're sending thousands this time, not just machines. Full legions, orbital support. You can't possibly hold them back. Myra's expression didn't change. We're not holding them back. We're teaching them fear. Her words sent a shiver through him. He had seen many armies in his life, many warriors who claimed to be fearless, but never anyone like these humans. They didn't fight for honor, they didn't fight for revenge. They fought to survive, and to make sure no one ever forgot what survival truly meant. The ground began to tremble. From the distant plains came the roar of engines and the heavy march of crag war machines. Giant armored walkers stomped through the dust, firing plasma bolts into the air. Above them, black warships cut across the clouds, their cannons glowing red. The crag commander, a towering creature covered in iron plating, sent out a message across all channels. Valorians, surrender now and die quickly. The Deathworlders cannot save you. Mira smiled faintly and replied on the same open frequency. We don't do quick. Then she gave the signal. The battlefield erupted. Explosions ripped through the front lines as hidden charges placed by the humans detonated one after another. Crag walkers stumbled, their legs torn apart. Human soldiers emerged from the smoke, firing strange weapons that cut through armor like paper. The crag tried to counter, but the humans were everywhere and nowhere, moving with impossible speed. One crag soldier screamed as a human appeared behind him, knife flashing once before vanishing back into the haze. From above, human drones, small, silent, deadly, swarmed like insects, slicing through the enemy ranks. The crag formations collapsed within minutes. Rethan's troops, watching from behind the human lines, could barely comprehend what they were seeing. They don't use formation tactics, one Valorian soldier whispered. They move like chaos. Rethan shook his head slowly. No, not chaos. Instinct. It was true. The humans fought as if they could sense every shift in the battle, every weakness, every opening. Where the crag relied on discipline, the humans relied on experience born from centuries of surviving the impossible. One human soldier took a plasma bolt to the shoulder, stumbled, then got back up without hesitation, patching the wound mid-fight before charging forward again. Even wounded, they were unstoppable. Mira led from the front, calm as stone, her rifle firing in perfect rhythm. Each shot struck precisely where it needed to. Her voice through the comms remained steady. Team Delta, flank left. Team Echo, suppress. Don't let them regroup. In less than an hour, the crag's second wave was broken. Fires burned across the plains. The remaining crag retreated, leaving behind wreckage and silence. The Valorians cheered, but the humans didn't. They moved among the ruins, checking for survivors, gathering the wounded, silent as ever. When it was over, Mira walked to the captured crag commander, who lay pinned under the wreckage of his own machine. He hissed at her, his voice dripping with rage. You are not warriors. You are beasts. Mira knelt beside him, her calm eyes meeting his. You're wrong, she said softly. Beasts kill for hunger. We kill to protect. The crag commander spat. You think you can stop the Dominion? We will return. We always return. Mira stood, her shadow falling over him. Then we'll be waiting. She turned away, leaving him alive. It wasn't mercy, it was a message. Back at the command post, Rethan watched the human soldiers rest for the first time. Some sat in silence, sharpening their blades or checking their weapons. Others stared at the ground, lost in thought. They didn't speak much. They didn't celebrate. Rethan walked over to Mira. They fear you, he said. The crag. They've never feared anyone before. Mira looked at the burning horizon. Good. Fear makes them hesitate. And hesitation saves lives. Rethan hesitated before asking, You've fought them before, haven't you? She nodded slowly. Long ago, when the crag first reached our system, they thought Earth would be easy to conquer. They called our world a death world before the first shot was even fired. They thought it was an insult. They didn't realize it was the truth. She looked at him then, eyes cold and distant. They came to take our planet. They left it burning. We made sure they never came back. Redhan didn't speak. He didn't need to. He finally understood why the humans were so different. They didn't see war as glory or duty, it was survival. Every victory came with a cost they had already accepted. That night, as the wind blew over the ashes of the crag dead, Redhan stood outside the human camp, watching the stars. The Deathworlders had arrived, and with them came something the galaxy had long forgotten: true fear. Somewhere far above, on the edge of space, crag fleets were regrouping. Their commanders shouted in anger, trying to understand how a handful of humans had destroyed 2 entire legions. But deep in their dark hearts, a new feeling grew, one they could not admit. For the first time in generations, the crag dominion was afraid. Night settled heavy over Tarnis 4. The battlefield was quiet now, except for the distant crackle of fire and the soft hum of human machines repairing themselves. The air smelled of smoke, metal, and victory mixed with loss. Commander Redhan walked through the ruins toward the human camp, his armor still scarred from the last fight. He found Captain Mira Cole standing alone near the edge of a broken tower, looking up at the stars. Her armor glowed faintly blue under the moonlight, and her eyes looked distant, almost haunted. For the first time since she arrived, she seemed less like a soldier and more like someone carrying an unbearable memory. Redhan stopped beside her, unsure if he should speak. Finally, he said quietly, "You've won 2 battles in 2 days. My people are calling you saviors." Mira didn't look at him. "We're not saviors, Commander. We're just doing what we do best, survive." Redhan studied her face. "You speak like someone who has seen too much." Mira gave a small, humorless smile. "That's because I have. Every human has." She turned her gaze back to the burning horizon. "Do you know what it's like to live on a planet that hates you?" Redhan frowned. "No. Then you can't imagine Earth," she said softly. "Our world doesn't want us there. Everything on it tries to kill us: storms, animals, diseases, even the ground itself. We grew strong because we had to. We learned to fight, adapt, endure. The weak didn't survive long. The strong learned compassion because they knew what suffering was." Redhan listened, realizing he was hearing the truth behind the humans' fearsome reputation. "So that's what makes your people different," he said. "You learned war from your own world before you ever left it." Mira nodded slowly. "When the crag first came to us, they thought Earth was easy prey. They saw our world's violence and thought it had already destroyed us. But it had done the opposite. It made us something else." Her voice hardened. "The crag burned our cities, enslaved millions. But when they left, we followed them. And we never stopped." Rethan's eyes widened slightly. "You chased them across the stars?" "We didn't chase them," Mira said. "We hunted them. Every colony they built, we tore down. Every ship they sent, we turned to dust. But after the war ended, humanity disappeared from the galactic maps. We withdrew, rebuilt, and promised ourselves we'd never fight again, unless someone asked for help." She turned to face him, her eyes sharp and clear now. "You called for help. So we came." Redhan looked down, guilt in his chest. "We didn't even know you existed. Our records said Earth was dead." Mira shrugged lightly. "That's how we prefer it. Fewer people come asking for monsters when they think the monsters are gone." For a moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the crackle of distant fires. Then Redhan said, "You're not monsters." Mira smiled faintly. "Tell that to the crag." They stood quietly for a while, watching the stars. Then Myra's comm unit buzzed. A human voice came through. "Captain, long-range scans detect heavy movement in orbit. Crag reinforcements, 3 battle cruisers, inbound." Mira didn't flinch. "ETA. 4 hours." She turned to Redhan. You need to evacuate your civilians underground. This next fight won't stay on the surface. Ret Han hesitated. What will you do? What we always do, she said simply. Fight smart, hit hard, and don't die. Ret Han wanted to argue, to tell her it was impossible, but the words wouldn't come. He saw something in her eyes that silenced him, a calm certainty that death didn't scare her. Maybe it never had. Later that night, Ret Han returned to the Valorian command post and ordered an immediate evacuation. His officers questioned him, but he only said one thing: the humans have a plan. And I've seen what happens when they do. Meanwhile, Mira and her team prepared their next move. The humans gathered around a holographic map of the orbiting Crag fleet. Myra's second-in-command, Sergeant Vale, spoke grimly. 3 cruisers, multiple escorts. If they land, the planet's finished. Mira nodded. Then we don't let them land. Vale gave her a knowing look. You're thinking of using the hammer protocol, aren't you? The room went silent. The hammer was not a weapon, it was a myth. A relic from humanity's darkest wars. Mira said nothing for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "It's the only way." Vale sighed but didn't argue. The humans knew what the hammer could do. It wasn't just destruction, it was annihilation. The Crag had unleashed it on humanity centuries ago, and humanity had rebuilt it, stronger and smarter. It could end a fleet, or a planet. As the humans prepared, Ret Han stood outside the camp, watching their strange dark ship. He had never seen such quiet resolve in any army. They didn't pray, they didn't shout, they didn't ask for luck. They just worked. At dawn, Mira approached him one last time. When the sky burns, stay underground. Don't come out until it's over. Ret Han nodded, his throat tight. You're going to destroy them, aren't you? No, she said softly. We're going to remind them why they feared Earth. Then she turned and walked away, her boots crunching softly over the ash. As she boarded her ship, Ret Han finally understood what she meant when she said humans didn't fight for glory, they fought because they had to. And now, as the Crag fleet descended from the heavens like a storm, he realized something terrifying. The galaxy had forgotten about Earth. But Earth had not forgotten the galaxy. The sky over Tarnus 4 turned red as the Crag fleet descended. Their massive cruisers glowed like burning suns, their shadows stretching across the planet's surface. Every city, every survivor, looked up in terror as the air filled with the deep hum of invasion. Commander Ret Han stood inside the underground command shelter, the ground shaking beneath his boots. They've started atmospheric entry, one of his officers said, her voice trembling. Ret Han looked at the radar screens, 3 enormous Crag battlecruisers, dozens of smaller warships, and thousands of dropships, all descending like a storm. Are the humans ready? He asked. The officer hesitated. Their ship hasn't moved, sir. They're just waiting. Ret Han clenched his fists. Waiting for what? Above them, Captain Mira Cole stood on the bridge of the human ship, her eyes fixed on the holographic display showing the incoming fleet. Around her, her soldiers moved calmly, checking systems and preparing weapons. There was no fear, no shouting, just quiet focus. Sergeant Vale approached her. All systems are armed and charged. Are you sure about this, Captain? The hammer hasn't been used in centuries. Mira didn't look away from the display. It's not about being sure, Vale. It's about doing what must be done. Vale hesitated. We could die up there. Mira finally turned, her expression calm but fierce. We came from a world that kills us every day. Dying isn't what scares us. Failing does. The ship's engines came alive with a deep roar that shook the ground. Inside the Valorian shelter, Ret Han looked up as the human ship rose slowly into the sky, its black hull reflecting the firelight. The sight silenced everyone. They're going up, whispered one soldier. They're flying straight into the Crag fleet. Ret Han whispered back, God help them. The human ship climbed higher and higher until it vanished into the burning clouds. Above the planet, the Crag fleet formed an attack line, preparing to fire. The Crag commander sneered, his voice echoing through his ship. One ship? That's their answer? Then let them burn. He raised his clawed hand, and every cannon in the fleet began to charge. But before the first shot was fired, something strange happened. The human ship went completely dark. No energy readings. No signals. It was as if it had vanished. The Crag sensors struggled to lock on, but the ship's outline shimmered, disappearing into the blackness of space. Then, without warning, it reappeared behind the lead cruiser. A blinding blue light flared, and the cruiser exploded from the inside out. The blast tore through its hull, splitting it apart like paper. The human ship was already gone, moving faster than anything the Crag had ever seen. Within seconds, another explosion lit up the void. 2 ships down. Panic spread through the Crag fleet. Their communications filled with static and screams. They're everywhere. We can't track them. Myra's voice came through her comms, cold and steady. This is for Earth. Then she pressed a sequence on her console. Activate the hammer. Deep within the ship, ancient systems came online. The lights flickered. The air itself seemed to hum with power. A massive core at the heart of the vessel began to glow, white-hot and blinding. Sergeant Vale looked at Mira. If we fire that thing, there'll be nothing left. That's the idea, she replied. Outside, the ship rose above the Crag fleet, its weapons retracting, leaving only a single massive cannon exposed at its center. The Crag tried to scatter, but it was too late. A beam of pure energy shot down from orbit, cutting through the darkness like a sword from the heavens. The beam tore through the Crag fleet, slicing through ships as if they were made of glass. The entire sky lit up, turning night into day. From the surface, it looked like the sun had exploded. Rethan and his people shielded their eyes as the ground shook violently. The beam lasted only a few seconds, but when it ended, there was silence. The Crag fleet was gone, completely erased. Only debris and fading fire remained in the void. Slowly, the light faded, and the human ship hovered in the quiet darkness, smoke trailing from its hull. Inside, Mira stood still, her hands resting on the console. The crew looked at her, exhausted but alive. Vale broke the silence. The hammer worked. The Crag fleet is gone. Mira nodded slowly. Then so are we. He frowned. What do you mean? She looked out at the stars. That much power comes with a price. Our reactors overloading. We can't stay in orbit. Vale's eyes widened. We can eject the core. Mira shook her head. No time. Get the crew to the escape pods. Vale hesitated but obeyed. Moments later, pods launched from the ship, streaking toward the planet below. Mira stayed behind, watching the stars grow brighter on the screens. Rethan, watching from the surface, saw the escape pods descending like falling stars. Then he saw the human ship, glowing, breaking apart, burning silently in the sky. No, he whispered. She's still up there. Moments later, a massive explosion tore through the heavens, brighter than anything Tarnis IV had ever seen. The shockwave rippled across the clouds, scattering the fires below. The humans had destroyed the Crag, but they had paid the price. Hours later, Rethan led a rescue team to the crash sites of the escape pods. Many humans survived, bruised and burned but alive. Among them was Sergeant Vale, who looked at Rethan with hollow eyes. She stayed behind, he said quietly. Rethan felt a heavy weight in his chest. She knew what she was doing. Vale nodded. That's what scares me. She always did. That night, Tarnis IV was quiet again. The stars above were calm, the smoke finally beginning to clear. Rethan looked up at the sky where the human ship had been. For the first time in generations, the Crag Dominion was gone. But so was the woman who had saved them. And somewhere, far beyond the stars, a legend was born. The Deathworlder who became a light strong enough to burn the darkness itself. Silence covered Tarnis IV like a heavy blanket. The war was over, but the planet still bled. Cities lay in ruins, the air thick with smoke and dust. Fires flickered in the distance like dying stars, and every breeze carried the smell of ash. Commander Rethan stood on the edge of a broken wall, staring at the sky where the crag fleet had once hung. Now there was nothing but a faint shimmer of light. What remained of Captain Mira Cole's final stand? Around him, Valorian soldiers moved quietly, tending to the wounded and collecting the fallen. The humans helped too, their faces grim and unreadable. They didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. Victory to them was just another day of survival. Sergeant Vale sat near the ruins of the human ship's escape pod, his armor cracked and covered in soot. Rethan approached him slowly. "You should rest," Rethan said gently. Vale shook his head. "Can't. Not yet. We have to recover what's left of the captain's ship." His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed him. There was grief there, a deep, silent kind that no words could reach. Rethan sat beside him. "She saved this planet. She saved all of us." Vale looked up at the sky. That's what she always did. She didn't believe in saving herself. He took a long breath. "You know, most of us didn't even want to answer your signal. Command said it was too far, too dangerous. But Mira read your message and said one thing: if we don't help them, we become the crag. And that was it. No orders, no debate. We left." Rethan nodded slowly, understanding now what kind of leader she was. She gave her life so others could live. That's not just bravery. That's something greater. Vale looked down at his cracked gloves. That's humanity. Later that night, the surviving humans gathered near the remains of their ship. They set up a small beacon, a memorial light that pulsed softly, like a heartbeat. Rethan joined them, watching as they placed a metal plate on the ground. Etched into it were simple words: Captain Mira Cole, Deathworlder, Defender, Human. No speeches were made. No tears were shown. They simply stood in silence, each one remembering in their own way. When the ceremony ended, Rethan stepped forward. "You've done more for this world than we could ever repay," he said quietly. "What will you do now?" Vale looked at him, his expression unreadable. "We'll rebuild, just like we always do. Then we'll move on. There are other worlds out there. Other signals. Someone else will need help." Rethan frowned. "You mean, you'll keep doing this? Fighting wars that aren't yours?" Vale nodded. "That's what it means to be human. Our world taught us that surviving alone means nothing if others die beside you." His words stayed with Rethan long after the humans left. Days passed, and Tarnis IV began to heal. The crag threat was gone, their fleets destroyed, their communication lines silent. For the first time in decades, the Valorians could breathe without fear. But peace felt strange. It felt too quiet, too fragile. Rethan often found himself walking to the spot where Myra's ship had fallen, staring at the scorched earth where her last battle ended. He remembered her calm voice, her steady eyes, and the way she had faced death without hesitation. She wasn't just a soldier, she was something far greater, something the galaxy had forgotten existed. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, Rethan found Vale standing at the same spot, staring at the stars. "You're leaving soon," Rethan said. Vale nodded. "Tomorrow. We've repaired one of our smaller ships. It's enough to get us home." "Home," Rethan repeated softly. "Earth." Vale smiled faintly. "If you can call it that. It's a place that doesn't forgive mistakes, but it remembers its people. Always." Rethan hesitated, then asked, "What was she like? Before all this?" Vale's eyes softened. "Mira? She was quiet. Always thinking. Always planning. She wasn't fearless like everyone thought. She was terrified, of failing, of letting people die. But she never let that stop her. That's what made her strong." He looked back at the sky. "You see, on Earth, fear doesn't make you weak. It makes you careful. It keeps you alive. That's what the crag never understood. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of rain. For the first time in months, real rain began to fall. Soft, cleansing, gentle. It washed over the ruined buildings and turned the ashes into dark rivers. Rethan tilted his head up, letting the drops hit his face. It's almost like she's still watching, he said quietly. Vale smiled. Maybe she is. Humans don't believe in gods much anymore, but we believe in memory. As long as we remember, none of us ever truly die. When the rain stopped, Vale turned to go. His armor gleamed faintly in the moonlight. If the crag ever come back, he said, you won't face them alone. Send another signal. Earth will hear it. Rethan extended his hand. Then I'll make sure the stars remember your world. They shook hands firmly, warrior to warrior. The next morning, Rethan watched as the human ship lifted off from the surface, leaving behind trails of blue light. It rose higher and higher until it disappeared into the sky, leaving only silence. Tarnus 4 was safe again, but something inside Rethan had changed. He no longer saw the humans as savages from a death world. They were proof that life could rise even from the harshest soil. That courage could be born from suffering. That hope could survive anything. He looked once more at the memorial beacon still glowing faintly among the ruins. Rest well, Deathworlder, he whispered. The stars will remember your fire. And somewhere far beyond those stars, on a world of storms and mountains, perhaps Captain Mira Cole's story was already being told around a campfire, of the time when Deathworlders came to save a galaxy that had forgotten what it meant to be truly alive. Years passed after the Battle of Tarnus 4, but the memory of that day lived on across the stars. The Crag Empire had fallen silent, their fleets scattered, their homeworld lost to confusion and fear. Whispers spread through the galaxies, stories of a single human ship that destroyed an entire armada. To some, it was a legend. To others, a warning. But to the survivors of Tarnus 4, it was a truth carved into history with fire and sacrifice. Commander Rethan had become an old man, though his eyes still carried the sharpness of a soldier. The Valorian capital had been rebuilt, stronger and brighter than before, with new towers of steel rising toward the sky. In the heart of the city stood a monument, a tall black spire with a glowing white crystal at its peak. Beneath it was a simple plaque that read, "To the Deathworlders, who came when no one else would." Rethan often stood before it in silence. Each time he looked up at that crystal, he remembered Mira Cole's calm voice echoing in the command shelter, remembered the light that had torn through the heavens. That light had not just destroyed an enemy, it had reignited something long forgotten, courage. One morning, as he visited the monument, a strange ship appeared in the sky. Sleek and silver, smaller than the warships of old, but bearing a familiar symbol, the blue and white insignia of Earth Command. Rethan's heart skipped a beat. He hurried to the landing platform, where a group of humans disembarked. They were younger, their armor newer, their faces filled with curiosity. At their front was a woman with sharp eyes and a confident stride. She saluted him respectfully. "Commander Rethan?" she asked. "I'm Lieutenant Arya Cole, United Terran Expeditionary Force." Rethan froze. The name hit him like lightning. "Cole," he repeated softly. She nodded. "Captain Mira Cole was my grandmother." For a long moment, Rethan couldn't speak. The resemblance was uncanny. The same steady gaze, the same calm strength in her voice. "Your grandmother saved this world," he said finally. "She gave everything." Arya smiled faintly. "I know. My family kept her story alive. We were raised hearing about Tarnus 4 and the Deathworlder who fought the impossible." She looked up at the monument behind him. "I wanted to see it for myself." Rethan felt a strange warmth in his chest. "Then come. I'll show you where legends are born." He led her through the city, past rebuilt streets and gardens that had grown where craters once were. Children played under banners that bore both Valorian and human symbols. The two worlds had become allies, their bond stronger than any treaty. As they walked, Arya asked, Did you ever find anything from her ship? Rethan nodded slowly. Only fragments. The blast was too powerful. But one piece survived, the captain's insignia. We keep it here, in the Hall of Remembrance. They entered a vast chamber filled with relics of the war. At the center was a transparent case holding a small, scorched metal emblem, an Earth Command badge, engraved with the initials MC. Arya approached it slowly, her hands trembling slightly. She really was here, she whispered. She wasn't just a story. Rethan smiled gently. Stories don't die, Lieutenant. They evolve. They remind us who we are. She turned to him. The new Terran Council sent us here to reconnect with our allies. But for me, it's more than that. I came to finish what she started, to make sure no one forgets why she fought. Rethan nodded. And you will. Because the universe still needs her kind of strength. That evening, they stood together at the edge of the rebuilt defense walls, watching the stars. The night sky was clear and full of light. You know, Rethan said, after she was gone, people started calling your kind Deathworlders as a warning. But here, we say it differently. We say it with respect. Because we've learned that sometimes, only those who come from the harshest worlds can remind us how to live. Arya looked up at the stars and smiled softly. On Earth, we say something similar. Only through struggle do we earn the right to hope. Rethan chuckled. Then your world and mine are not so different after all. The next day, the humans began setting up a small outpost near the old battlefield. Scientists and engineers scanned the ruins, collecting what little remained of the past. During one of the digs, Arya uncovered something buried deep in the ground, a small data core, half melted but still functional. When they activated it, a faint holographic image appeared. Static filled the air before resolving into the figure of a woman. Mira Cole, her face calm and steady as ever. Her voice, though damaged, still carried strength. If you're hearing this, it means we did it. The Crag are gone. But remember this, victory isn't destruction. It's what you build after. Protect each other. No matter the cost. The message ended, leaving silence. Arya stood frozen, tears welling in her eyes. She left this, she whispered. For us. Rethan placed a hand on her shoulder. Then it seems her mission isn't over. It's been passed on. That night, they added the recovered message to the monument. When activated, Myra's voice would play softly across the plaza, echoing through the night air, a reminder to every Valorian and human who walked there. Generations later, people would still gather around the monument on the anniversary of the battle. They would light candles, tell the story of the Deathworlders, and listen to the voice that had saved them all. As the stars shone above, the galaxy had changed. The name, Deathworlder, no longer meant a being to be feared. It meant someone who refused to give up. Someone who stood against darkness no matter how vast. And as Rethan looked at Arya Cole, standing tall beneath the same sky her grandmother had died under, he knew the legend would never fade. The Deathworlders had come once to save them. And one day, if the galaxy ever called for help again, they would come once more. Because that's what humans did. They answered the call.